Now, anyone who loves football, soccer, and has lived through the last 20 years will never forget the beautiful football played by the Spanish giants, in particular Barcelona, when they had a great manager in Pep Guardiola, but so many great players, Lionel Messi, Xavi, Iniesta. You could list all the great players. Dani Alves, in fact, who's just come back to the club, aged 38. Sadly, Barcelona really have imploded in the last couple of years, badly managed and financially strapped. And it's a really sad story. Lionel Messi is now in Paris, not very happy there playing for PSG, but he's gone. And of course, Real Madrid also have had their troubles, but they are top of the Spanish league, while Barcelona are ninth. But the memories that Barcelona have left us with in the last 20 years are indelible and will stay with us forever. And to discuss what's been happening recently, we're joined now by an Irish journalist, Richard Fitzpatrick, who lives and works in Barcelona. There's no doubt, Richard, that what we've seen from this great club in the last 20 years or so is so memorable. If you're lucky enough to be young, it will be talked about as long as football is played.
Yeah, Eamon, that's the crux of it, I think. Barca over the last 15, 20 years have been extraordinary since, throughout Messi's career, basically. When he joined the first team in 2004, they've won 4 Champions League trophies during that period and 10 league titles. I mean, you think of Alex Ferguson at United,
Yes.
26 years, but he, as great as he was, he only won 2 Champions League trophies, or, Bayern Munich have only won, I think, 4 in their history, or possibly 5. So the hope in Barcelona and Spain is for Barca fans around the country is that they resurrect themselves. But a return to the heights, those great heights again, they're not really realistic. A great return would be to win, maybe 1 Champions League trophy in the next decade, or that would be more realistic. So there has been a huge fall, and we'll see how they resurrect themselves. The European landscape is different now in football. There's only 8 or 9 elite clubs at the top. Barca are still in that bracket, so it's not like they're going to disappear the way, say, Celtic have disappeared as a force in Europe.
Yes, the point about them is they're 9th in La Liga at the moment. Real Madrid are on top, but neither club is expected to be in contention for the Champions League this year. And in Barcelona's case, they may not even qualify the way they're going for the Champions League next year. Indeed, they may not qualify for the knockout stages of the Champions League. They have to do a job on Porto. Is it, or Benfica next week?
Correct. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to think they were for 14, 15 seasons. They were always in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. Even it was always for the last decade. It was always Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, Barca were going to be in the semi-finals more or less. But now they're struggling yet to get out of the group stages. They got 2 kind of ropey 1-0 victories against Dynamo Kiev in the last 2 group games, which has got them into a position where if they beat Benfica, it's basically as a final, as they say in Spain. Whoever wins that game will go through as second place in their group with Bayern Munich. So it's an extraordinary situation for the likes of Barca. And domestically, they're in trouble as well. They're 11 points adrift of the top of the table, 6 points from the relegation zone. They've been just dreadful all season. They just can't score goals, which was an obvious enough thing to happen when you lose the likes of Messi and Griezmann during the summer. Messi scored 38 goals last season, Griezmann 20, almost 50% of their goals last season. So they don't have that firepower up front anymore. So they're really been very poor. The more disturbing aspect of their form has been just how lackluster they've been, lack of confidence. So the return of Xavi as coach has brought this huge wave of optimism now.
Yes, I mean, we should explain for anyone who doesn't know, Ronald Koeman, a Dutchman, a great player for Barcelona, scorer of a winning goal in what was then, I think, the European Cup in the final. He didn't last very long. He's only lasted a matter of months as coach. One of his first actions as coach was to let Luis Suarez leave the club on a free transfer in a phone call that lasted 30 seconds. And also it was under his watch that Lionel Messi signed for PSG. He's gone. He's been sacked. And Xavi, one of the great players from the greatest of all Barcelona teams, captain of that team, he is back now as the coach. And it's also worth pointing out that that great team was really the backbone of the great Spanish team that won the European Championship in 2008, the World Cup in 2010, and I think the European Championship again in 2012. So these people, and Xavi in particular, has real pedigree. He went to Qatar, unfortunately. He's obviously not so concerned about human rights, but then who is in football, because the World Cup's going there next year. And he went there as a player when he retired from Barcelona, did some coaching, and now he's back. He's also a major hero in Barcelona, but he faces an awesome task.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I haven't seen an outpouring like it, even more than when Cruyff returned, an ex-Barca player as coach in 1988, or the great Pep Guardiola in 2008. They weren't as received as warmly or as widespread as Xavi has. He's a huge unifying force at the club. Cruyff and Guardiola always had their critics, but everybody is rowing in behind Xavi. He's a local Catalan kid, you know. He has been at the club since he was a boy, as a youth team player, came through the ranks, you know, is arguably the most quintessential Spanish footballer in the conversation as the greatest of Spain's players ever, along with Iniesta and Luis Suarez from the 60s. You know, as you say, captain of that great Barca team, left. His last game was the Champions League victory in 2015, 4 Champions League titles under his belt. So he comes in with huge credit in the bank, and he's also, his philosophy of football is Barca to his fingertips, in the same manner as Pep Guardiola and Cruyff before him, all about position-based football, they call it in Spain, about maintaining possession, the high press, playing with wingers.
Tiki-taki football, we call it here.
Exactly.
As well as the high press, which is, of course, a feature of the Manchester City game under Pep Guardiola and many other clubs at this point. But the problems he faces are awesome, and they're huge. Left behind a mess. The successive presidents have made messes, including losing Lionel Messi. Coutinho, who Liverpool fans will remember, they were very reluctant to let him go. He's the highest earner at Barcelona, on 160 million euros a year. Now, he can't get his game.
Yeah, that's the problem Xavi faces. I mean, in one respect, he's coming in at a good moment, because it's hard to see that the club could fall lower than it is at present. So in theory, he can only go upwards, and this is what people are saying. Dani Alves, the Real Madrid player, said when Zidane came in, he gave us a huge surge. They were 12 points behind in mid-season, and they got to within a point of Barca in that year's league title race in 2016. So Xavi can move forward, but the problem is he doesn't have the squad that was there 10 years ago when he was at the peak of his powers. You know, like you say, with Messi and Iniesta or other players like Carlos Puyol. I mean, huge yes. leaders. He instead the resources at his disposal are Coutinho, as you say, the likes of Coutinho, the best paid player in the squad. He's been an absolute shambles at the club. He just lacks the character, the confidence to be a crack, as they say in Spain, a great player.
Isn't it the case that Coutinho style of play, it kind of clashes a bit with Messi's, and that Messi and he didn't have a great relationship? In other words, Messi didn't like him.
Totally. He was brought in as well. Initially, they hoped he would replace Iniesta in midfield, but that didn't work out. He's basically a number 10. Yes. They had 3 number 10s in their team when over the last few years with Messi and Griezmann, but he couldn't find his position in the pitch. Now it's just after years of underperformance, he's just lacks that spark or that confidence. He's been whistled at by the fans, so he can't get he can't get a starting position in that Barca 11, even despite the departure of Griezmann and Messi.
And of course, extravagance has been part of Barcelona's problem. The salary that Messi was on is just off the charts. But even for Coutinho to buy him from Liverpool, they paid 160 million euros, and he was the highest earner in the club, and maybe still is. Dembele, another player they bought 4.5 years ago for 140 million euros. He has missed more games in those 4.5 years than he's played for Barcelona. He's still there, and apparently Xavi believes he might be able to build a team around him.
Yeah, the case of Dembele is interesting, and it's telling. He is a stick that is used to beat the previous president at the club, Bartomeu. He signed him instead of, he had the option to sign Mbappe in the summer of 2017 when they were scrambling to replace Neymar, who had been poached from PSG. Yes. But they bet on Dembele instead of Mbappe.
Where did he come from, Richard?
He came from the Bundesliga. He was playing in Germany with Borussia Dortmund. Right. 19 years of age at the time. He'd scored 6 goals in the Bundesliga. He's a very exciting player, but he'd only, one season at the top. He'd previously been playing in France. A very exciting player, great potential, but a lot of his troubles are self-inflicted. He's been really injury prone, has had several serious operations, predominantly around pulled hamstrings and pulled calf muscles. But I say a lot of his problems are self-inflicted because of his professionalism. He's, turning up late for training, missing training sessions, taking off to go to France to see what he says was to see his mother without sign off from the club. You have the situation in Spain where the press would be camped outside his house. The curtains would be drawn. He'd be inside in the house with his entourage playing video games until the early hours in the morning. The scandalous behaviour for a professional footballer at his level. But for Xavi, the reason Xavi sees him as so important is because his style of football is built around wingers, and he has great potential, but he's so injury prone at this stage. It's difficult to see how he can turn things around.
Yeah, the other players, he's brought back Dani Alves to train at the club. Dani Alves is 38, or going to be very shortly 38. And there's talk of signing him again. He was a great player, Brazilian fullback who liked to go forward. But at 38, it smacks of desperation, trying to recreate the past.
Yeah, absolutely, Eamon. And Xavi himself is a nostalgic move in a way. And there was even talk. Dani Alves was presented as a new signing yesterday at Barca, although he he can't register to play until January. But the president Laporte at his presentation said he wouldn't rule out both Iniesta and Messi returning as players. So, as you say, it smells of desperation. I think Dani Alves is a very, very interesting case. He's, like you say, he's 38. He's going to be the oldest player to ever play for Barca. But he came on a free transfer. His salary is symbolic. It's the lowest paid salary in the squad. But he is an absolute beast of a player. He won the Olympics last summer with Brazil. I mean, we've seen this with the great players, Ryan Giggs or Cafu or Romario was playing for Brazil at 39, or Tom Brady in American football is still doing it at 43. So let's see how he works out. He'll probably only play 20 or 30 minutes, but I mean, I would argue I haven't seen much of him over the last couple of years, but he's better than any of the fullbacks that are there at the moment in his position at right full. So Xavi knows him, better than anybody. So he brought him in for a reason, and it is, as you hint at, just to bring in that professionalism and that alegre, the happiness is the way to describe it here, that he brings to the squad. And he's a winner. Like Laporte, the president, said yesterday, this is a self-made man. He was raised on a poor farm in the northeast of Brazil, getting up at 4:00 in the morning to go out working in the fields with his dad, carrying a machete on his shoulders. He's a worker, and he'd bring that work ethic. And really, it is important that the Barca kind of has that self-confidence and that winning mentality again. The interim coach over the last few weeks, after they sacked Koeman, is an ex-player from the 90s, Sergi, a full back, and he remarked that he couldn't believe the lack of confidence, the pessimism in the squad. Yes. They were 3-0 up in one of his games against Celta Vigo away, and they ended up drawing the game 3-3. Just the heads are down, so you need those kind of big characters, that kind of leadership. And Alves, however little he plays over the next 6 or 7 months, he will bring that attitude to the dressing room was needed.
Yes, and in the case of Coutinho, for example, Liverpool fans and Premier League fans will remember him fondly. He was a top player in the Premier League, hence the 160 million transfer fee. And Liverpool didn't really want to let him go, but they used that money very well to get Virgil van Dijk and others. He can't make the starting 11, but he's also the highest earner in the club. So fundamentally, and we know this from your conversations with us on the stand, but also we reviewed Simon Cooper's book, Barca, with Simon on the podcast. This situation has arisen because of unbelievable extravagance and mismanagement by a succession of presidents of the club, because the presidency is where the power resides or should reside. But it seemed that Barcelona, with the wages they were on, the salaries were just unbelievable and nothing like them in Europe. They're finished financially now. They're $1 billion in debt.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they posted 480 million losses last season. It's incredible. A bit of that was doctored because the incoming regime wanted to discredit the previous regime and top load the debt. They'll be in a better position financially next season. Like the La Liga President Javier Tebas, who would not be a lover of FC Barcelona, or for many reasons, both footballing and business and his own political disposition. He would have a history of being from the right wing. He said, Barca's problem is not financial at this stage. There's a lot of clubs with far worse debt to income ratios. More than 70% of the clubs in Europe are in worse state in that regard. And their problem is just institutional. There's a lot of hysteria in the club. So the return of Xavi is good for Barca fans in that sense, that he'll bring a bit of unity to the club and a bit of calm. He will be given more time than anybody else would be in his position.
Yes, and I mean, in general, we've talked about this before, Richard, but Real Madrid and Barca are the two giants in Spain. At the moment, Real Sociedad, I think, are top of the league, although Madrid are right alongside them. But Madrid also have massive problems. I mean, Eden Hazard, who they paid 160 million for, he's been injured most of the time he's been in Madrid. He can't even get into the Belgian team that played Wales the other night. His brother was playing in front of him. But a bit like Dembele, Hazard has really not played at all and is being paid unbelievable money, but it just appears that his career is really finished.
It's very sad, Eamon. It's a different case that Dembele. Dembele was a huge bet by Barca. It was a rational, really, the move. But Hazard was a banker. You know, he came in. He was the best player in the 2018 World Cup. You've seen him for several years. You know,
Chelsea,
at Chelsea, he was magical. So he was a top player, but he was just very unfortunate. He got a really bad ankle injury in a Champions League game late in 2019 against PSG. His compatriot Munier injured him, and he hasn't recovered from that injury. He's just been like a washed up now at this stage. He's past the 30-year mark. They call him like he's another Kaká, in reference to the Brazilian Kaká who came injured to Real Madrid and never prospered.
Gareth Bale is another player, cost 100 million. He's been injured a lot, shall we say, since he's been at Real Madrid. He fell out of favour with Zinedine Zidane, and they say his great loves in life are number 1, Wales, playing for Wales, number 2, playing golf, and number 3, Real Madrid. His career has plummeted, but his salary it's unbelievable what he earns for not playing at all.
Yeah, that's the thing. What's
his salary again, Richard? Remind me.
It would be net. It would be 18 million. He'd be upwards of 35-40 million gross. So
netto, netto they call it in the Premier League.
right.
It's not netto. Understand? I have to tell you, Richard, it's very disappointing.
Yeah, it's a millstone around the club's neck. At least Hazard is doing his best. He wants to play for Real Madrid, but Carlo Ancelotti doesn't count on him. He says there are better players in the team or in the squad. Yeah. But Bale, like you say, his priorities with Wales, you could set your clock by it. He goes away on international duty every 6 or 8 weeks and comes back injured again. He's out injured. He'll miss the next six games. He scored, I think, 3 or 4 goals in the last 3 seasons with Real Madrid, albeit one of those he was out on loan at Spurs. But his priorities are elsewhere. He's only one thing on his mind, and that's to get to the World Cup in Qatar next year with Wales. And he's prioritising that over his contract with Real Madrid.
Just a final question, Richard. I mean, traditionally, historically, the Spanish teams, Real Madrid, are so wonderful. It's such a great club. They played such great football. Barcelona, of course, also. Now, those two clubs and Juventus in Italy, another great club with great tradition, they are the 3 remaining clubs interested in pursuing the Super League idea. And my understanding is that they haven't given up those 3, and they are going to pursue their case through the courts and ultimately through the European Court of Justice. Is that the case? And is it a fact that nobody can compare with the Premier League and the television money Premier League clubs have as things stand at the moment? Nobody really will be able to, and they'll dominate Europe unless this Super League happens.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening, Eamon. It's intriguing. I mean, on the night before Messi gave that tearful press conference announcing he was leaving Barca in August. Those three plotters, the president of Juventus, Agnelli, and Florentino Perez, Real Madrid's president, the head honcho of this breakaway Super League, and Barca's president, Joan Laporta, met in a seafood restaurant here in the city in Gracia, plotting their next move. The next step in this saga will be a court case in Luxembourg with the European Court of Justice next year to decide on a case between the breakaway European Super League, namely Florentino Perez and his cohorts, against UEFA. Florentino is arguing that UEFA are breaking monopolies law, that they can't contest a breakaway Super League. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I'll tell you what I think, Richard. I think they'll win because of the Bosman ruling. And the key clause in all of this is the finding of the European Court of Justice on the Bosman case. UEFA and the football authorities argued that football was a sport. And Bosman and his lawyers argued that football was a business. And you couldn't have restrictive practices such as are practiced in sport in a business. The European Court of Justice found for Bosman. And if it goes there again, the Bosman case will be the ruling that the justices look at. And on the basis of their decision on Bosman, which goes back almost 30 years now, they will find that UEFA cannot stop people trading as they wish, with whom they wish. That's just my view. I wonder, has there ever been any in-depth discussion of that in Spain?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a very good legal reading of it. And the thing is, it's Florentino.
I don't want it to happen. I think it would be disastrous. But that's the way the law will work.
No, yeah, let's see. I mean, there's nothing glorious about UEFA and the Champions League, the way they run it. This would be Florentino's beef, the lack of transparency. They take 40% of the Champions League earnings and nobody knows what happens. There's no transparency around transfers or salaries like there is in American sports. You've got, the UEFA has no moral authority. Look how they behaved during the Euro 2020 finals, waiving the COVID restrictions, marching spectators into the country without observing isolation rules, with travel and stuff. But Florentino's other enemy, let's say, in this saga is the national leagues. So last month, it's a very political situation. Like last month, 16 of the EU member state governments came out denouncing the European Super League. I know in Spain they're very nervous at a government level about the idea or the notion of European Super League.
Yes, it would kill the game in Spain.
It would kill, but beyond that, Spain is a very fragile country. Politically, it's made up of 17 regions. We know all about, Catalan separatism and Basque separatism. The La Liga football in the country is a great unifying force.
Yes.
And it would be a similar situation across Europe to largely to lesser degrees. It's particularly volatile here in Spain. So, and in England, it's about money. The European, the English Football League is totally unified against the European Super League.
Yes.
That's their enemy. They want to maintain their cash cow. So it's evolving all the time. Florentino has adjusted his plans. He's now talking about 2 divisions of 20 teams each in this proposed European Super League. So it would appease all these fans who were worried about the relegation promotion aspects of it, that it wouldn't be so much a closed club. So it's really, really fascinating to watch it unfold. But it's going to go on for a while. Let's see where the road takes us.
And meanwhile, we have to wait to see if Xavi is the Messiah. He'll need to be to get Barca out of the hole. they've dug for themselves. Richard, thank you very much for joining us from Barcelona. That's Richard Fitzpatrick, an Irishman working and living in Barcelona, who keeps us in touch with what once was the most fantastic league in the world, and to some extent that glory is fading. Thanks to Richard.